Hello and welcome to part 2 of Citizens Forum, being filmed in the Memorial Arena on Blanchard Street. You know, I'd just like to comment, well, I won't. We're going to be talking about Wi-Fi in schools. Our guest is Tammy Jeske, who's quite involved. I'm just going to start off with a brief quote from an expert. Is Wi-Fi safe? This is what he says. It is my opinion that the state of scientific research sufficiently establishes a risk that this kind of Wi-Fi radiation may constitute a risk of serious as well as irreversible damage to health. Some individuals are more susceptible to injury than others, including children, pregnant women, elderly, and those who are ill. That's Dr. David Carpenter. And when he testified in Quebec on this radio frequency issue, he said, "I'm a public health physician educated at Harvard Medical School. My current title is Director of the Institute for Health and the Environment at the University at Albany and Professor of Environmental Health Sciences within the School of Public Health. Formerly, I was the Dean of the School of Public Health at the University of Albany," and on and on. So this is an extremely serious man. He's done the research, he knows the science, and the science says that Wi-Fi is safe. Tammy, you have a son in school district number 62, which is in Souk, who is sensitive to Wi-Fi. So
that's right. Thanks, Jack, for having me on the show. I appreciate the opportunity to share some information, and I hope there will be some parents out there that this will, and others, that this information will be useful for, I hope. As of the end of the last school year and the beginning of this school year, Souk, I'll just refer to as District 62, carried out and implemented their multi-million-dollar technology plan, which encompassed a intensive infrastructure of commercial Wi-Fi networks in all of the schools, including elementary level. This was done without any consultation with parents. This was done without any disclosure of the serious health risks associated with this type of radiation, and it was done without any parental consent. All of those things are very concerning to any parent. However, really, I'm here to discuss, you know, what the implications of that means, in particular for my son, who has an environmental sensitivity to this type of radiation. This sensitivity or intolerance is referred to by the Canadian Human Rights Commission as electromagnetic sensitivity or electrohypersensitivity. They recognize that just like you know, car exhaust and pollen and peanuts and chemicals and different scents, that some portion of the population reacts adversely to these things, and
more quickly than the rest of us, that's all.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so my son has, when he is exposed for a prolonged period of time, I would, to Wi-Fi, it seems to be particularly the worst. My son doesn't use a cell phone. He does use a laptop at home, which is hardwired, and he doesn't seem to have any problems with any technology as long as it's hardwired. However, when he is near a Wi-Fi router for any length of time, he starts to develop very bad headaches. He starts to develop tachycardia, which is a rapid heart rate, which can be very serious, dizziness, nausea, and he gets really cold hands and very specific symptoms. So for him, this is a big problem. And I think what you'd like, even as a starting point, is for the school district to have at least one school in the system that he could attend. Absolutely, absolutely. Now, School District 61 and 63, which is Victoria and Saanich, I think you said they have some exempt schools, or? That's right. Actually, I believe it's been over 2 years now that the Saanich School District actually decided to outrightly ban Wi-Fi in elementary schools. There was parents who approached them with many health concerns, and also they realized that there was real limitations with the technology and that it wasn't really necessary in elementary schools. They also went on to limit it in middle schools to 25% area coverage. I actually know some parents in the Sewage School District, and they can attest that indeed they did see IT personnel coming into some of the schools and actually removing routers because it exceeded the 25% area coverage. So they are
in a Sewage school, 25% of the school is Wi-Fi.
In middle schools.
Yeah,
in high schools is fully. I don't think there's any restriction. As far as the Victoria School District, almost 2 years ago they put an unofficial moratorium. The school district put a moratorium on any official installation of Wi-Fi in elementary schools. However, I believe middle schools and high school in Victoria pretty much all have Wi-Fi now.
I just want to remind people that Wi-Fi is dangerous. I mean, I think you would agree, and you know, the scientific community kind of agrees that Wi-Fi is dangerous. There's just no question about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, not only is there, you know, the topic that I'm here, you know, to talk about people with this environmental sensitivity, students in particular in schools that are given no option, but there's also, like you mentioned, the long-term health implications. So for both reasons, I really don't want my children exposed, but certainly when my son can't even tolerate any longer being in school, that's a real problem. He actually had to be removed from school this year. He is being homeschooled. And you can imagine for a 14-year-old being ripped away from his school and his friends, his teachers, it's been quite devastating for him.
How many people have this kind of sensitivity?
Well, the Health Canada recognizes between, they state officially between 4 and 6% of the population, and they recognize, the Canadian Human Rights Commission states that up to, they believe, 35% of the population has some varying degree of a sensitivity to this. It could be that you get a headache, it could be that you have, you know, some irritable bowel, or you know, some dry, irritated eyes, a skin rash, you know. And this is the problem, is a lot of people are completely unaware that the very environment in which they're exposed to every day could be the very cause of their ailments. So I would really encourage people to look up, you know, there's so much research. You don't have to dig very long before you come upon a plethora of peer-reviewed science from credible medical establishments. Of course, I know on your show you've mentioned the World Health Organization, the International Agency for Research on Cancer, who recently classified this as a 2B carcinogen. And I think, you know, many people are likely unaware that there's real serious implications with that classification. To give an example of an equivalent risk would be lead, DDT, methylmercury, HIV, you know, and the list.
Exactly.
Very serious
this stuff
exposures.
So what can people do at home, let's say, to reduce their exposure?
Right. Well, and you know, that's a good point. At home, you know, you have the choice. You have the choice to be educated on the potential risks or not. You have the right to use this wireless technology or not.
But what can people do? Can people turn off their routers at night? And
certainly, turning off your router at nighttime, because sleep, of course, without sleep,
yeah, you're sleeping. What do you need it for? Just turn it off, yeah.
Absolutely. And there are studies to show that indeed this type of radiation has a great impact, a significant impact on reducing melatonin, which of course is a vital hormone imperative for your deep restorative sleep.
And the mobile phones people use at home, what are they called?
Cell phones or cordless phones,
yeah,
DECT
the cordless phones. The
yeah,
cordless
absolutely.
phone in your house. Those, I keep hearing, are extremely bad for wireless
They
emissions.
are extremely bad. In fact, in places like Germany, they've the model of a cordless phone we have here in Canada, certain countries like Germany have outrightly banned. They only allow a model that has a default option, or not option, mechanism that the phone will turn off when it's not in use, so that the actual base station is not transmitting.
In some countries, their governments are offering
Absolutely.
them this kind of protection, whereas here in
Absolutely.
Canada, we don't even know about
Yes.
it. I
Well,
mean,
Jack,
I've never heard that before.
There's actually a lot of things other countries, especially Europe, that are taking very you know, big steps now that, you know, the science is really starting to pour in as far as Wi-Fi in schools and limiting the placement of cell towers. And, you know, things like cordless phones in the home.
So folks,
they're taking real steps.
People who are watching this, please contact your local media, be it the newspaper, television, or radio, and say, how come all this stuff is happening and you never tell us anything about it? Why is that,
right,
Mr. Media?
Well, you know,
Mrs. Media.
You bring a good point about, you know, about the media. It's why I appreciate having this opportunity to share some information, because as you know, this is the first time ever that, you know, the very industry in which there's great concern that the product they sell, it actually owns most of the media stations. So it's not completely a surprise to see that there's a real blackout of information on this topic.
And this is an important issue. I mean, it's our health and safety.
Absolutely.
And we're bathed in it now 24 hours a day, no matter where you go.
Absolutely. There really is nothing greater than the health and safety of our children. And
you mentioned a PAC resolution. You can just maybe explain what a PAC is and tell
Absolutely.
people what they said. And again, we've never heard about this.
Absolutely. And I know, and it, well, PAC stands for Parent Advisory Council or Committee. And each school has their own parent group, and collectively they'll have a district PAC, so that represents that school district. And then at the very top you have the BC Parent Advisory Council, which is a representative of all the little PACs together across BC. Okay. We had a very important last year at the AGM. There was 2 resolutions pertaining to Wi-Fi that passed by a very large margin, nearly 2-to-1, concerning Wi-Fi in schools. The first one that passed was to cease all further installation of Wi-Fi in schools.
So the Parent Advisory Committee's
Yes.
head body told our school districts to stop putting in wireless.
That's correct.
And nobody ever told us about this. Amazing.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, most parents I talk to are completely unaware. Unfortunately, this information is left really to the PAC bodies to pass along to their parents.
Yeah, the media is out there
and
too busy covering the last break and enter or celebrity murder that they can find. And then what was the second resolution?
And the second one was that that school districts provide at least 1 school at each level of education free of Wi-Fi and wireless technology, and be exclusively hardwired, so hardwired computers, hardwired phones, to accommodate students like my son who are made ill by this exposure.
Lots of students, I'm sure, would want to go to a school that wasn't wireless, because
Absolutely.
A lot of people, you know, we're not the only ones who are, everybody's at risk, or we all know the danger. I'd prefer not to.
Absolutely.
You know?
And more parents are becoming educated on this, and not necessarily have they seen any ill effects in their child, but they simply just do not want to take any chances with their children's health. And so, of course, having some schools free of Wi-Fi, I actually think would be a very popular idea. I think there's a lot of parents that I know personally that would very much like to have their child at that school. So the problem, the crisis that my family is in right now is the fact that my son has nowhere to go to school. Even amongst all 3 school districts, he would be going into grade 9 next year. That would be considered high school in Saanich School District, so there would be Wi-Fi. In Victoria, there's Wi-Fi in all of the middle and high schools, and now Souk. So my son is really left with no good option. It's either he suffer serious ill effects, or he has to be isolated and homeschooled. You know, one of the statements that's ingrained in all of the mottos, of the school districts is that you know, a safe learning environment is paramount for their students. And I really, you know, I ask, you know, given all of this information and knowing that there are children who are adversely affected in the immediate by this, how is this providing them a safe learning environment?
I would say all children are adversely affected. To me,
yes, absolutely, to some
the
degree.
analogy is always cigarette smoke.
Absolutely.
It's kind of the same thing, and I think in the end we're going to find out that the cost of this is even greater than the cost of cigarettes.
Absolutely, and there has been experts that have stated
some people smoke
yeah.
for 40 years, nothing ever happens to them, but we know the price that a lot of people pay from smoking. So
right, and so what we've had to resort to is we've appealed to the school board. The school board has outrightly dismissed our son's case and has said that we have failed to prove a disability. You know, I don't know, you know, if a parent comes to them and says, my child has a peanut allergy, I don't know what lengths they have to go to prove that their child has a peanut allergy. We have provided
and this is after the PAC asked every school district to provide at least one school at every, you know, one high school should be free. The PAC say that. The public is never told, and our school boards who we elect.
And the response I got from School District 62 regarding the BCC PACs was that they understood that it wasn't unanimous, and so it did not speak for all the parents. Now, I don't know about you, but as far as my understanding of a vote is the majority wins. So nonetheless,
not when our illustrious leaders don't want the majority to win. Then the majority always loses.
Right.
That is shocking.
And as I said, it was a 2-to-1 margin. It was almost, you know, so it wasn't by a very close. It was overwhelmingly parents supported those resolutions. So we have now appealed to the Ministry of Education, and our case is still open. It's been over 6 months. We have not received a response, and so we have now just filed a human rights complaint with the Human Rights Tribunal. We have a lawyer, and unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to take the legal route. You know, it's just sad that it's had to come to this. I know that this is going to end up costing the school district money that they don't have. It would be so I'm sure it could be used for so many better things. However, they've really left us no choice. The Canadian Human Rights Commission is very clear in their recommendation to accommodate people with this type of, with any type of environmental sensitivity.
And really, we've only got,
half a
minute left. But it's everyone. This is a technology that is just unhealthy. The same as, I don't know, you know, dirty water or not cleaning up, you know, after yourself and working in a chemical factory. It's dangerous. Do we really want to expose all of our kids to it? Do we want to expose all of ourselves to it? I think that's got to be our decision. And the problem is that the media doesn't report the truth and the politicians won't listen. But anyways, Tammy, thank you very much. And thank you for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome to part 3 of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Wednesday, March 5th in the Memorial Arena. Thanks to our volunteer crew and Shaw staff for allowing it to happen. Our guest in this segment is Richard Atwell. The topic is sewage treatment, and it's a lot of information we're going to run through. So Richard, why don't you start off by telling us who you are?
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me on your show. Well, I'm a software engineer by trade, but I like to volunteer. And about 18 months ago, I got involved in this project, and it's just dragged me into the bowels of it. It's such an expansive issue. I had no idea how complicated it was going to be.
So you started a campaign because you had some time and you were interested?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there have been other groups around. There's ARREST, of course, the Association for Responsible and Environmentally Sustainable Sewage Treatment, RSTV. There was another one called Citizens Coalition on Sewage Treatment, and another one called Sensible on Sewage. And all those groups really came together under the campaign that I called Stop a Bad Plan to try to raise the issue a little bit more. And the opportunity for this came with the federal by-election. Denise Savoie had stepped down, and we knew an election was coming. And so we thought that would be a really good opportunity, like I said, to raise the level of the issue and get more people talking about it.
So the by-election happened a couple of months ago. It was a federal by-election. Denise Savoie stepped down, and the NDP won. Murray Rankin won, but sewage treatment seemed to be a big part of the by-election. It became almost, well, one of the primary issues, I think.
Oh yeah. Well, early on, Monday Magazine had promoted the idea that the by-election would be like an informal referendum on sewage treatment. And you know, at the time I heard it, I thought, well, that's maybe a little bit hard to believe, but based on the CRD's business calendar, the by-election coincided with the events that were happening at the CRD. They had some important decisions to make, and all that came together in the by-election. So we didn't really know what to expect until Paul Zummerville appeared. He just burst out of the gate as the Liberal candidate, criticizing the plan, calling it the billion-dollar boondoggle, and that really started setting the agenda a little bit. Now, he was written off as a one-issue candidate early on, because I think he was maybe a little bit too aggressive with the issue, but it allowed the issue to percolate through the campaign. Running for the NDP was Murray Rankin, of course. He ended up winning that seat, but and he was sticking to the plan. He was a definite supporter of the sewage treatment project as it was designed, and his support basically eroded during the campaign. When you take a look at the final polling results, he was neck and neck with the Green candidate, and that was a bit of a surprise as well.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
I was absolutely shocked.
And in the end, it was the advanced poll that was done early on that gave him his lead.
Yes.
And so I think if the election had gone on another week or so, even just another week, he might have lost that support and actually lost to the Greens, which would have been really history-making.
That would have been history-making, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And as we both said, I think the sewage treatment issue was a big part of that, because it is, people, I mean, I myself don't buy the argument anymore that we need to do it. It almost seems like the most scientifically precise way we can do this is to allow the oceans to do it, because once we bring the problem onto land and we have to deal with it, we're not going to do it as well as it's being done now, and we just happen to be, you know, in a 1 in a million situation. There's very few places on Earth that have the situation we have, which is a lot of water moving back and forth every day. It's not like it's a river, it's not like it's a lake, it's the ocean. And I mean, the science, I want to do the right thing on sewage treatment. I don't care if it costs more, I don't care if it costs less. I want to do the right thing. And the people I trust and the people I believe are telling me that we're doing the right thing right now.
Well, and this is what the candidates were hearing at the doorstep. And I went to one of the debates, and Rankin told me personally that he had gone through the entire of James Bay, and no one had raised the issue of sewage treatment. I mean, it was in the newspapers, it was all over the place, and it was really unbelievable. When I looked into it, what I found out that what the campaign was doing is they were pre-flighting the voters at the door. They would take a look and talk to them about the issues, and when sewage treatment came up, the volunteers had instructions to move them from the topic of sewage treatment to something else like the Enbridge pipeline. So while the candidates stayed on the street, they moved on to a friendlier house, and that's just how campaigns work.
There were some public meetings.
Yeah, so while the campaign was going on, there were two groups at least. There was the community associations, really. There was the Prospect Lake District Community Association and the Saanich Community Associations Network. Both of those groups had invited the candidates just to meet with community members to talk about the sewage treatment issue that was coming up in the news all the time. And Open Victoria, of course, also had their event at the Oak Bay High School. And I think John Farquharson was on the show last year talking about that event. And CRD directors were invited to come on to those, to come to those events. And Judy Brownoff, Jeff Young, they turned them down every time. Only Vic Derman managed to show up to any of those events to speak about the issue.
So just, I was kind of looking at this while you were talking. So once again, there were public events sponsored by
local groups.
Yeah. And they wanted some of the CRD members to speak to them. And
yeah, basically they wanted to have some contact with their elected representatives, and in the case of the Oak Bay Town Hall event, that was to actually debate the issue, but these community events were simply to come and talk with the community association members You know, the invitations came out from the president of the community association, but you know, they sent back letters saying they weren't going to attend.
You know, we keep getting back to this same underlying problem that our democracy is completely failing us when our elected representatives won't come to talk to us. And, you know, I mean, you're being paid. They're being paid to represent us. And yet they've become, it seems, completely separate from us. What do you think the feeling is in the city about the current sewage treatment plan? Is there support or questions, or people are against it?
Well, there's certainly questions still. I mean, every time polls are done, you know, a vast majority of people have real issues with the plan and the way that it's been approached. I mean, it's a bit like the HST, where you know, you're trying to get people to decide, you know, yes or no on a black and white issue of whether they're for or not for sewage treatment, and they're not addressing the issue of the plan itself. You know, is the plan a good plan? Is it going to, you know, solve the environmental needs? Is it going to solve economic needs? Is it going to solve social needs?
So there's two issues. Are you for or against sewage treatment? I think everybody's for sewage treatment. In our case, maybe the ocean is doing it best, but then you're saying the second issue is the plan that has been created that we're going to build here, and that's not the best plan?
Yeah, and what complicates the issue is that, you know, unlike council meetings, the CRD holds its meetings during the day while everyone's at work or at school. You have to leave those, you know, you have to leave your job to go down and attend the meetings and see what's going on. Simply reading the minutes afterwards at the end, after the fact, you know, doesn't really serve much of a purpose. So it's very hard for the public to engage themselves in the process.
I think Vic Derman has done a good job. I'm sure there's some others on the CRD. So where are we now? Well, let me go back to your questions. Do you want to recap of the major events? Do you want to run through the most important ones?
Well, I think looking back at the history of it is worthwhile, because there are there's a bit of a scandal going on here that most people don't know about. And let's go back to 1992, when the CRD actually had a referendum on sewage treatment. This happened during the, you know, one of the municipal elections, and CRD set up booths in the malls to educate people on the issue, and people got a chance to have a vote on it. And the majority of people voted just keep things as they are, the status quo. A smaller number of people were split 50-50 on whether they wanted to go for a further level of treatment. And those two typically are primary treatment and secondary treatment. So that happened in 1992. In 2003, Barry Penner approved what's called the liquid waste management plan. And that gave the CRD the go-ahead to continue treating the way it had been treating for the next 25 years.
Okay, so you're saying in 2003, the
Yep.
Minister of the Environment
Yep.
gave Victoria,
CRD.
gave the CRD the approval to keep doing what we're doing for another 25 years.
Yeah.
Okay, that was in 2003.
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, we have a treatment system. It's called preliminary treatment, and we have marine monitoring that the CRD does. I mean, they've been doing it for decades. And so based on that practice and that evidence, he okayed this plan for the next 25 years.
Okay, and you're saying the marine monitoring shows that things are...
No measurable harm to the environment.
Okay.
Yeah, and no risk to human health as well, which has been confirmed by, you know, the current and former medical health officers.
Okay.
So in 2004, the CRD commissions a group called the CTAC panel, and it stands for the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry. They were based in Florida, and the CRD paid them $605,000 to study our treatment practice and to make any recommendations. And terms of reference were set for the report, so that they got back a report that would fulfill their, you know, the questions that they were asking. And the final term of reference for the report was to determine whether or not Victoria needed to implement further treatment, if so, what kind, and to take a stab at estimating what the costs might have been. When you actually look at that report, you look at the final conclusions of it, they don't actually address that question at all. They basically came to the conclusion that the public's going to have to decide whether or not there's a benefit for sewage treatment or not. And even though there were, you know, 80 plus pages of, you know, scientific analysis and they talked about the issue, basically they said it came down to a political question. Now, why that's really interesting is because A week after the CRD received the report in 2006, Barry Penner, the Minister of Environment at that time, issued an order to treat. Now the CTAC report was going to come back from the panel, and the CRD was going to look at it for 5 months. They were going to put it under peer reviews, they were going to invite the public to participate, and they simply canceled all those hearings, and they said, we're being told to treat, that's what we have to do. But the report did not say, you've got to move to secondary treatment because of the science based on the report. They left it up to the public opinion. So the following year, in 2007, Campbell government changed the legislation, and they changed a particular regulation called the Regional District Liabilities Regulation, and they exempted sewage treatment from referendum. So here you have the report saying it's up to the people. CRD paid $605,000 for this, and then you've got the Campbell government changing the regulations so that we can't even be heard on it. All that happened within a short 2-year period.
And somehow I think everybody who lived here missed it, because I don't think we were ever told it in such a clear term. You know, and that's the media's job. They just don't tell us in clear terms what's really going on. And we remain in the dark while things are done to us, because to me, there's a plan in place to bring in sewage treatment. It doesn't matter what people want. They made a mistake by getting that CTAC thing, which said it should be up to us.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
So when I found this out, I was absolutely flabbergasted by it.
Well, I'm flabbergasted when I find it out now. So now here we are. It's moving ahead. It's moved ahead a long way since then.
Yep.
Where are we now, if that's where you want to go, or would you rather go somewhere else?
Well, part of what the organization did during the campaign was to rally citizens down at the CRD for some of these meetings. You know, we got people out of their jobs and, you know, out of their hobbies and, you know, school, got them down, arranged for 26 speakers to speak at the CRD on the issue. And the particular meeting that we were coming to was going to, basically it was there to enact a bylaw called the Commission Bylaw to pass control of this project over to an unelected body. So 26 of us spoke, and we ended up taking the whole 2 hours for the meeting, and then they just simply had to suspend the meeting and continue it on another date. So that happened on the 27th.
This happened on the 27th
of November.
Of November.
This is back during the by-election.
Okay.
So anyways, as we got up to speak, the first thing the chair of the committee tried to do was to reduce our speaking time to 3 minutes. And, you know, naturally the gallery booed, and Vic Dermott had to remind her that the bylaw allowing us to speak gives us 5 minutes. And so we had our 5 minutes. I mean, we all came down with 5-minute prepared speeches. This is a, you know, standard thing for city councils and for the CRD itself. When the meeting was over, in the afternoon, the CRD board met, made up of some of the members of the sewage committee that we had gone to see, and they changed the procedural bylaw of the CRD to limit us to 3 minutes.
Well, you know, it just keeps happening over and over again. The public is simply not wanted. In a democracy, it's supposed to be the public that sets the agenda. What we're seeing here is the agenda is being set somewhere else. The politicians are convinced that this is the way for what they should be doing, and then they manage us, you know, in whatever way necessary, at all levels of our government, right down to our municipal politicians. It's absolutely amazing, and it's got to change.
It's the only place that you can go and deal with the process, but, you know,
it's the process.
You can register, you can only speak to agenda items, and that keeps the business of the CRD moving ahead and not bogging it down too much. But when you get up to speak, you have your 5 minutes, and then that's it, you know. There's just silence sometimes, you know. There's no comment from any of the directors.
No, of course not.
And some of them are very engaged, like Vic Dermott and Graham Hill from View Royal and Barb Desjardins from Esquimalt, but the rest are just absolutely silent.
So let's just take a look from above at this whole thing. Number one, the science seems to say that we do not have to treat the sewage. Yes, of course it's a problem, but it's the most minor problem by doing what we're doing now. If we bring it onto land, we're creating a bigger problem for ourselves. It's going to cost $1 billion to do. And thirdly, we are building a system that is, I think, from what Vic Dermott says, out of date already. If we're going to build a system, if we're going to spend the money, let's at least build the right system for the year 2013 or the year 2030. Let's not be building a 1990s system which seems to be what they're doing. So all of it is a little bit crazy, and yet this is the direction we're going in, and the public seems unable to make anything happen. So the last point you said was, what can we do?
Well, you know, frankly, we are running out of time. I mean, the contracts for this project are going to be signed sometime later this year, probably in November and December. And we're just on a collision course with this thing unless people get involved with it. So I'd like to encourage people to come to our website, StopABadPlan.ca, find the contact information for the CRD directors, and make contact with them. You know, get 5 friends and family to call them up, send them emails, call them on the phone, and let them know that you think this project is a really poor idea.
StopABadPlan.ca. Do you have a, what's it called, PayPal button there?
Yeah, people can send donations as well. We're more than happy to take those, and we use those to fund the campaign and to spread the word.
Richard Atwell, thank you very much.
Check.
Another important issue, you know, we've just got to start going in right directions. I want to thank everybody for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Democracy, a free press, it's up to all of us to get more involved, unfortunately. You know, the people who are running the show are doing such a bad job that we simply have to step up to the plate. And I think the way to go is push for democracy and help build a media that will tell all of us the truth. Thanks for watching Citizens Forum.